Today we are going to look at the Journalism and Mass Communication course number 2, Mass Media and Society. We are particularly looking at the block number 2, which is Mass Media and Development. We are looking at the concept of development communication, and also development support communication, which looks at population literacy rather than just education on a broader term, and some of the issues involved and the campaigns involved in literacy, immunization, and population education. But before we start, let's just have a quick question which allows you to get a feeling for what is development. What does development mean? Here is the question. I'd like you to take a look at this, and at the end of the session, we will look at the answers. Perhaps we have a chance to look at another question. What is the people's participation? What does people's participatory development mean? Let's look at the answers to these two questions, and we'll get those at the end of our session. We are looking at a large number of issues, particularly in literacy. How does literacy mean development? What role does it play? What role did media play in literacy? We are also looking at some of the other key issues. What kind of message designs? What are the kind of strategies? What are the steps we have to take to design messages for media? And we look at how does the population education issue relate to development. So these are some of the key questions, and we have with us Avik Ghosh, who is Senior Fellow at the National Institute of Adult Education, and he has been involved in the literacy campaigns and the National Literacy Mission right from the start. So he is very familiar with the kind of things that have been happening, and he will share not only the insights and the experiences, but also give us where the plans have had shortcomings and what are the kind of linkages we should look for in terms of getting the development agencies together. Along with him is Mr. DK Bose. Mr. Bose is now a consultant. He also has been long experience in social marketing. He was earlier with Hindustan Thompson and was involved in a large number of campaigns. He has also worked intimately with the very successful campaign on immunization and is presently consultant to UNICEF on missions in Bangladesh, where they are finding that there is arsenic in water, and how do you tell people how to deal with their water which has arsenic? I think that's really a tough assignment. So we will look at his experiences in immunization. We also have with us Ina Singh. Ina Singh is now the assistant representative in the UNFPA, which has been involved in population education. And she is going to be looking at population education and what has been happening in that in India. We have Avik, who will take us through the literacy mission, give us an overview of what happened, and then look at the details of the kind of things that have taken place to give us an idea and insight into the campaign.
Thank you, Jai. What I wish to do today is to give you an overview to the National Literacy Mission. The National Literacy Mission was set up in 1988 by the Government of India as a time-bound program to make 100 million persons in the age group 15 to 35 years literate by the end of the 8th five-year plan, which was at that time slated to end in 1995, but later got rescheduled and has just ended in 1997. Now, to achieve this goal, it was understood and felt necessary for NLM to generate awareness among the literate population and the general public about the problem of illiteracy in India and mobilize their support, particularly the literate persons, and not only support, also their contribution towards eradication of illiteracy. Now, before I proceed with what kind of a social communication campaign was conceived and executed and the specific features of the campaign, I would like to show you a brief film, a short film, which will give you the feeling of the National Literacy Mission, what it did, what it achieved, the kind of large-scale participation of people that came into the campaign over the now 7-8 years.
पढ़ना लिखना सीखो ओ मेहनत करने वालों पढ़ना लिखना सीखो ओ भूख से मरने वालों.
Nine years ago, we made a commitment to teach 100 million people to read and write. And this was the beginning of a movement for literacy.
मुझे नहीं लगता था कि मैं कभी किसी को पढ़ा पाऊंगी, पर इन्हें पढ़ाने के बाद लगा पढ़ाना कोई खास मुश्किल नहीं है.
The strength of the mission are the hard-working volunteers in every village, in every town, whose dedication and enthusiasm has transformed a national commitment into a people's movement. They have walked long distances, braved electricity failures, even worked without chalk, and out of so little have created a learning environment for so many.
Our early day's work starts at 9 a.m. and ends at the next day morning, that is after 12 p.m. We are engaged in the hardest work of our lifetime, but we enjoy it, we love it, and we are happy while doing it.
என் பேர் வசந்தா, நான் படிச்சிருக்கேன். அறிவியல் இயக்கத்துல பாடம் நடத்துறதுக்காக என் வீட்ல இடம் கொடுத்து நானே பல்ப் போட்டு 10 பிள்ளைகளுக்கு சொல்லி கொடுத்துக்கிட்டு இருக்கேன்.
पढ़ो लिखो भाई मेरी बहना पढ़ो लिखो जी आ आ ई ई क ख ग घ पढ़ो लिखो जी आ आ ई ई क ख ग घ पढ़ो लिखो जी
पढ़ो लिखो भाई मेरी बहना पढ़ो लिखो जी आ आ ई ई क ख ग घ पढ़ो लिखो जी. एक छोटी सुई.
Trainers and volunteers evolve a variety of creative teaching methods rooted in people's life experiences and the local cultural traditions. This makes the process of learning more familiar and enjoyable.
अब मैंने इसमें से ये कला को दे दिए. कितने दे दिए कला को? 5. तो ये 5.
The benefits of literacy are many, from reading signboards to increased self-confidence.
आओ मिलकर एक नया इतिहास रचाएंगे, पढ़ लिख कर इस देश को साक्षर बनाएंगे.
இப்போ அந்த முதலாளியை வந்து எங்களை அரட்டி விட்டுனா நாங்கள் அறிவியல் இயக்கத்தில் சேர்ந்து நல்லபடியாக படிச்சுக்கிட்டு நாங்களாம் மணி எழுதி கொண்ட போஸ்ட் இதில் போலீஸ் ஸ்டேஷனில் வந்து கொடுத்து தைரியமா வந்துருவோம், கலெக்டரை நேர போய் பார்த்து பேசிடுவோம். ஆனா எதிர்க்கிற ஒரு தைரியம் பெண்கள்கிட்ட இல்லாம இருந்தாலும், ஆனா இப்ப அவங்க எதிர்க்கிற ஒரு தைரியம் வந்திருக்குன்னா அது அறிவொளினாலதான் நிச்சயம் நான் சொல்லுவேன். அறிவொளியில நான் சேர்ந்த பிற்பாடு அன்றாடம் காலையில போறதும், பொதுமக்களை சந்திக்கிறதும், நைட்டு 11 மணிக்கு வர்றதும், இதனால என்னோட குடும்பத்துல சிக்கல் ஏற்பட்டு என்னோட கணவர் என்ன அடிச்சப்ப கூட எனக்கு மண்டை உடைஞ்சு போச்சு. இருந்தாலும் என்னால பல பெண்கள் வந்து முன்னேறணும், என்ன போல அடிமைப்பட்டு அவங்க இருக்கக்கூடாது, இனியும் இருக்கக்கூடாது. இவ்வளவு நாள் இருந்த பெண்கள் இனியும் நிச்சயமா இருக்கக்கூடாது, அவங்களோட நிலை மேம்படணும்னு சொல்லிட்டு ஒரே காரணத்துக்காக அந்த அடியையும் தாங்கிக்கிட்டு அறிவொளிக்காக இது நாள் வரையிலும் நான் வேலை செய்கிறேன். அறிவொளி வந்து பெண்களை பொறுத்தவரையிலும் ஒரு வசந்த காலமாவே நான் நினைக்கிறேன்.
The challenge of making 100 million people literate by the year 2000 is not small, and the struggle must continue.
सीखो वो मेहनत करने वालों, पढ़ना लिखना सीखो वो भूख से मरने वालों, पढ़ना लिखना सीखो वो मेहनत करने वालों, पढ़ना लिखना सीखो वो भूख से मरने वालों.
Well, that film gives a picture of all that has happened in the literacy campaign over the last few years. Now, what you saw was a large-scale participation of people and a lot of, what shall I say, cultural activities, singing, participation in rallies, and all this didn't happen just like that. There was a planned campaign, what you may call a social communication campaign, which used mass media, that is TV, radio and press advertising, which was specifically targeted at the literate population, primarily to enlist volunteers to teach the illiterate persons. Along with it, there was a lot of activities at the local level, what came to be called Kalajathas, which is a traveling troupe of cultural performers who would move from village to village, hold exhibitions, hold shows on the issue of illiteracy, and at the end of it, hold discussions with the people there and identify volunteers as well as learners. Now, very specifically, for the purpose of this program, I would focus on the mass media campaign, that is the TV, radio, and film and press advertising. Now, the objectives of the campaign as far as mass media were concerned were few and very specific. That is, number one, make literacy top of mind social issue. Number two, motivate the educated to teach one or teach few, and to motivate literacy functionaries. The creative strategy for the campaign was to offer deep emotional satisfaction for the volunteer as the benefit. And the different media, that is the film or television medium, the audio, the radio medium, as well as the press, were used with its specific kind of features to exploit the maximum benefit out of the specific features. Let us take a quick look at one TV spot that was produced at that time.
यकीन नहीं आता ये वही किशन है। चलो पढ़ाएं, कुछ कर दिखाएं, राष्ट्रीय साक्षरता मिशन.
That was the television spot. Actually, in the original spot, in those days, there was a post box number post box number 9999, which was also featured, and viewers were asked to respond to it. These days that post box isn't there, so that particular post box number is not mentioned in the spot. Unfortunately, I don't have the radio spot with me, but essentially in the radio spot, what was highlighted was the interaction between a person who queries a learner, who narrates her experience and how she has now become literate through the efforts of a volunteer, a local doctor maybe, or an unemployed youth maybe, and that whole story comes through. And that was used because in radio you have the opportunity to use dialogue much more than in the case of television. In press, a different sort of approach was used, and I'd like to show you the press ad. Now, there is a thumbprint, and the line below it says, "Ye aaj ki Kamala hai," and below that there is a scrawly signature of Kamala. So the line reads on, "Aap ise agar Kamala bana de, to kitne garv ki baat hai." So it uses a very, very classic sort of image of an illiterate person and a conversion of the thumbprint into a signature as the key line. It also has a lot of text, so that by arresting the attention of the person through that powerful visual, we go into the text. If I can just read one brief paragraph, it will show you the kind of evocation that was attempted. "ये बात सिर्फ एक नाम की नहीं है, ये बात है एक शुरुआत की, ऐसी बेहतर जिंदगी की शुरुआत जो आप दे सकते हैं कमला को। कमला का तो भला होगा ही, पर आपको अनुभव होगा एक ऐसे सुख का, एक ऐसे गर्व का, जिसे शब्दों में बताना बहुत मुश्किल है." So essentially, again, trying to focus on the emotional benefit to the volunteer. And at the end of that caption, there was a little form asking the person, the reader, to apply. With that, I would really like to end this presentation. The NLM advertising campaign was executed from March 91 to January 92, a one-year period. And at the end of it, there was an assessment that was done, which we will revert to in the course of the discussion.
We'd like you to listen to Dr. DK Bose. Dr. Bose has, as I said, been a consultant in social marketing, and I think he can straight away get into the immunization campaign.
Before I really go into the immunization campaign, I just thought I will take you through just about few thoughts on development communication. Development communication, as you all know, attempts to bring about behavioral change in people, attitudinal change in people, positive change in people. One of the important lessons that we have learned as we have started practicing social marketing and social communication is that change does not come about because people like us, we want other people to change. Change come about because people who are the sufferers wants a change, and they must have a reason. They must have an ownership to that reason to be able to change. They will not, and they do not change because we are asking them to change. So therefore, as we enter in the development communication or developing communication for bringing about positive social change, one of the most important things that we must do as creator of messages, communication, is to go as closer as possible to the audience. The audience come in many segments: general public segments, people who are suffering. Audience come in the form of people who provide the service. Audience come in the form of people who are the influencers, people who influence other people. So there are various forms or various segments of audience that needs to be communicated with to bring about changes. people at different level have different concerns. People come with who are affected, who are not affected. What are the profiles of those people? Where do they live? What kind of environment? What kind of language, religion, or social class they belong to? What are the kind of family unit they have? What are their place of work or residence where they live? The various aspects of their activities, daily routine, their travel habits, their group activities, all these knowledge helps the communicator in understanding the audience that we are dealing with. The other aspects deals with very specific, in this particular case, in case of say immunization, deals with health aspects, their attitude towards health. In India, we are mostly curative in health aspects in our behavior. We are not preventive. We don't believe so much in prevention as we believe or we resort to curative aspect of health behavior. So these are the kind of ways that one can study various groups of audience, their attitudes, their current knowledge, their behavior. The second aspect that one must remember is the various the various steps in the decision making process that people and the mind go through as they take a decision. All decisions goes through a particular process of thinking in their mind. It starts with a trigger, a stimulus that ignites a certain thought in the mind, takes it to a consideration stage. What aspects of the suggestion that we are making or the communication is making should be considered. Then takes it to a search stage. If I want to consider something, I look for information. What options do I have? What are a kind of number of areas that you can explore in terms of change? Then it leads to having searched, having considered, leads to a stage of choosing. Having chosen, you adopt that or you buy that or you do that kind of an exercise and then experience whatever practice that one has gone through. That again, experience again works as a stimulus and the whole process starts again. Therefore, in dealing with development of communication for social marketing or social issues, we need to answer certain questions before we really work out or develop messages. The question that we need to answer in these areas are: what is the opportunity or the problem which the communication must address? We convert every problem that we consider people are facing today or people have told us that they are facing today, convert into an opportunity for communication to work and achieve certain goal. The second question that we need to address is: what do we want people to do as a result of the communication? Most of the time we create communication for the sake of communication, and that quite often turns out to be a slogan because we do not really know what we want people to do as a result of the communication. Obviously, the most important question: who are you talking to? And in dealing with who are we talking to, if we are able to understand people by name, people by their locations, they are far easier than for the communication to be created. Next question that we must answer deals with: what is the key response? Every communication seeks a response, elicit a response, must elicit therefore the desired response. So what is the key response we want from this particular communication? And the last is: what other information or attributes might help in generating that response. In 1990, we created a communication campaign for immunization. I'll take you through very quickly on exact expression of these 5 or 6 points or 6 questions that we answered before we developed the communication. The first question is: what is the problem which the communication must address? It deals very specifically with 2 aspects of what problem or communication is addressing. Immunization service is available for the entire village population, and the largest group, which is the small farmers and landless, are unaware, and they are at a distance physically and attitudinally from immunization. Their comment is, or their belief is, that this program is not for us. No one from my community gets children immunized. That is the strongest barrier that communication needs to address. That's the strongest problem that the communication, and very specific problem that the communication need to address. So what do you want people to do when they see this communication, when they interact with this communication in any form, through any form of mass media or any other forms of media channels that they confront this particular communication? What we want is that community react to immunization. They must react. Otherwise, what we found is that they were indifferent to the whole thing about immunization. So we believe that the community must react to immunization. They must discuss. They must discuss among themselves the aspects of immunization, whether they should not. The whole objective was to take that indifference away from immunization that they have through discussions and reactions. Find out more about it and go to the immunization center or immunization session. Therefore, who are we talking to? Who do you want this response from? We want this response from, and we name people here because name does mean something, is Basanti and Hiraram. They are the people whose mind should change, whose attitude towards immunizing their children must change. They are a close community in a small village. That is the environment in which they live. They are a close community in a small village. They are illiterate, small farmers and landless laborers. This group, to whom the affluent farmers and school teachers and primary health centers are at a distance. They are not close to these people. The landless laborers, this large group of people, are away from this affluent farmers, school teachers and primary health centers. They are at a distance. They can be advisors. So their ways cannot be adopted by us. This is the barrier. Their ways are irrelevant to our needs. That is also a barrier that communication needed to address. So the two sides of the target audience, who are we talking to, were that they had, on the one hand, inherent resistance to change, and most importantly, we found that they do not do anything which does not have a stamp of approval from the community leaders or from the community per se. So they believe that if the community leaders or community influencers or community per se approve something, then they will do it. They are quick to react to whatever the community accepts. And lastly, prevention and protection viewed in the context of traditional belief. Something can be done. Tradition has said that this is the way it should be done, so they don't accept new ways of doing it. They trust in medicine only for cure. They see medicine only for cure. Immunization, therefore, is medication and therefore alien preventive concept in their lives. The response that we believe communication must generate against this picture of the target audience, against this mindset of target audience, against this attitudes and behavioral practices of target audience, very clearly, hey, it seems so many people like us are getting their children immunized. I must also get my child immunized. This is the kind of response that we want from the people. What we also did was to bring in the factor that immunization is a national movement. Everyone participating in this movement. Immunization leads to healthy future, through protection from 6 killer diseases. One of the important aspects was in this communication environment was that disability is fear more than death. Immunization protects from polio, one of the worst crippling diseases. So these are the communication element with which we started the communication, which had the urgency and the trust. Urgency through heightening the need for mass involvement, and trust is built by projecting the warmth of protection against the wrath of diseases and illness. This campaign was released in various mass media in 1990 May onwards, and within a year, after about a year or 18 months, the percentage of children immunized in the country, in the 4 states, UP, Bihar, Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, went up from the stage of 1990, it was about 40 to 60% of the children getting immunized, to 60 to 80% overall it went up. The worst case, of course, was Bihar, where the immunization effect was, the communication effect was not so much. But Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and UP, certainly there was an increased participation of the people. The indifference was reduced considerably, and larger number of children got immunized once this campaign had its effect. This campaign ran thereafter, not in a very focused manner, but I think overall there has been significant change in the attitude towards immunization. Thank you.
We've just had from DK Bose some of the insights in like intimate knowledge of the audience and the clarity of content, the kind of response that we should be able to get, a clarity in that, and that is usually a small step in getting what we want people to do. And the campaign design has been one of the most successful ones that immunization has been one of the most successful campaigns that we've had in India. Now let's look at what Ina has to say about the population education.
I think that what I'll do is very briefly just talk about the changes that have taken place in the population program and how that has an implication for the kind of changes that must take place in the way we communicate about population. This diagram shows how India's population has grown over the last century. The purple line shows the fall in the birth rate, which has been quite slow, and the line shows the fall in the death rate, which has been much more rapid. And the difference between these two is basically illustrates the growth rate of India's population. Now, all of you who are familiar with newspapers and have been keeping track of India's development scenario in recent years know that there's a great amount of fear about what this growing population is going to mean for India, what that's going to mean in terms of land use, in terms of availability of food, housing, shelter, jobs, and so forth. And there's been a lot of discussion about what India's future population size is going to be. This figure over here essentially shows that under different scenarios, depending on when India reaches replacement fertility, that means when couples have no more than 2 children, what India's population size will be. It could stabilize anywhere from between 1.7 billion to 1.4 billion. Now, over the last 30 years or so, a lot of the communication around the population issue has been to emphasize that India's population is growing very rapidly and that we must do something to decrease its growth, and that therefore every couple, every responsible citizen in the country needs to have a smaller family, don't have more than 2 children, preferably have less than 2 children. But over the years, we have also gained a lot of experience about what works in population communication and what doesn't. What are the reasons why fertility falls, and what are the reasons why population growth reduces. Now, if you break up the population growth into its different elements, you'd find that about 60% of the population growth occurs because there is a momentum of growth in any case. We have a very young population. About half our population is in ages that are still to go through reproduction, and so they are going to have their children in any event. So even if everybody has no more than 2 children, there's going to be a growing population in any case. So this has implications for what kind of communication you address to policy makers and to program managers, because we do need to be prepared to cope with this size of population. We need to be prepared in terms of employment generation, food availability, distribution of food, and so forth. Availability of education, schools, healthcare, and so forth. So that takes care of 60% of the growth. 20% of the growth comes because there is an unmet need for contraception. Recent studies have shown that about 20% of the population would like to limit their family size, but don't have access to the services or don't utilize the services to limit family size. So the kind of communication that needs to take place here is entirely different. This essentially translates into how health service providers communicate with clients, what kinds of services they provide clients, and how they make it easier for clients to accept family planning services. Another 20% of the growth comes because wanted fertility is higher than replacement fertility. What this means is that people want to have families that are larger than 2. And the kinds of communication that needs to be done to address this subgroup of the population is different, because their wanted fertility will decrease because women's status will change, because education status will change, because there is income and social security, and because people benefit from the fruits of development. So the kinds of things that have to be done for these segments of the population will differ. What you have to do for slowing the momentum of population growth is to increase the age at marriage and to increase the spacing between births. So that's one agenda for communication. What you have to do to meet the unmet need for contraception is another agenda in terms of communicating about availability of health services and improving the quality of client and provider interaction. And then there's a separate agenda for decreasing wanted fertility. In the last few years, we've also come to realize that changes in population growth rates population growth is going to slow in any case. And what we need to do is to meet individuals' needs. And therefore now we talk less about population control and we talk more about meeting people's reproductive health needs. We've even gone beyond talking about meeting family planning needs to talking about reproductive health needs. What does reproductive health mean? It means essentially that people should be able to have a satisfying and a safe sex life. They should have the capability to reproduce, the freedom to decide if, when, and how often they will do so. And this means that they must have access to services and information about safe, effective, and affordable means of family planning. They need to know what they need to do in order to reduce maternal mortality, to reduce the consequences of unsafe abortion, how to protect themselves from diseases like STD and AIDS and reproductive tract infections, and also in terms of interpersonal communication between men and women, how one can ensure that sexual relations are free of discrimination, coercion, and violence. So the texture of population communication is changing a great deal. It's moving from a discussion about growth rates and population size and the impact of that on national economy and land use to talking about what individuals need to know in order to be able to exercise reproductive choices. I think that's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you, Ina. That was a quick look at some of the key issues in population education. I'd like to address the first question to Avik. What are the lessons that we have learned from these campaigns, and what does research show in terms of the success of these campaigns, and how do you intend to apply some of these lessons in the next lot of plans for the new illiterates? Do you have any views on that?
Yes, certainly what the Literacy Missions campaign clearly shows is that a combination of using mass media along with, for want of a better word, we can call local media, that is both in terms of folk performances, folk theatre performances, singing and exhibitions, as well as interpersonal communication, that is a group of volunteers or activists interact with members of the community individually or in groups. A combination of both is a very effective strategy given our environment, particularly the rural environment where access to mass media is limited. And at a base level, we did get a large number of volunteers, and that's why the literacy campaign expanded very rapidly. But we have come to a stage where we need a different kind of an approach, perhaps, because we have to redesign the campaign of literacy. So we have to think our strategy all over again, perhaps. But in essence, the campaign was successful, and the mixture of mass media as well as local media and interpersonal communication was rather effective.
You really think that interpersonal media has been the one that has really been working. What did the electronic media do in this? What is your assessment on that?
Well, electronic media did what it was meant to do, which is to sort of, shall I say, reinforce that which was coming through in the interpersonal communication, as well as motivate the volunteers. The electronic media's role was to motivate the literate, to motivate the educated, to volunteer their time, to sacrifice part of their time, and to show that by doing that, they got an emotional benefit. They got a sense of satisfaction of doing something for the community, a sense of pride, and that has been the great success of the literacy mission at all, that people, as you saw in the film, people have volunteered their time working from 9 in the morning to midnight and after without thinking at all about it. And electronic media only reinforced that feeling.
The question is addressed to all of you. What are the local variations that you can bring into message design, particularly in terms of culture, language, age, emotion, women, men, or rural, urban? How do you take into account those requirements? Perhaps you would like to deal with that, Avik?
Well, certainly, you have to take into account the socio-cultural background of your audience, and I think DK in his presentation talked about the audience profile. And in all campaigns, language, cultural specificities are taken care of, and certainly in the case of literacy, we did that. But at the same time, I would like to say in mass media sometimes, while you do take care of it, it often becomes very expensive to have films produced in every different language. So you, technologically speaking, you might choose a simpler means, which is dubbing the audio track or something like that, and have the images in a way that will overall communicate to everybody without causing a jar.
Ina would like to add to that. Ina?
I think that kind of illustrates also why you cannot rely solely on mass media in order to undertake development communication. It's very, very important, particularly when you're talking about problems like health, fertility, family planning, so forth, to understand what are the cultural beliefs and practices that underlie a person's behavior pattern. Unless you know why they are not using a particular treatment, like for example, why they will not continue a treatment for tuberculosis for the entire duration that the treatment is needed to be carried out, you will not be able to communicate effectively because you will not know what is inside the person which is preventing them from listening to your message. So it's also very important that those people who are program managers, those people who are providing the service should learn to be communicators, because everything cannot come from somewhere else. Centrally designed messages are not
that
will
takes
be the
us
answer.
into our time. We go back to our first question, what is development and development means? Our emphasis here is, as DK also said, positive change in people, people changing things for the better. So the item is number 3. We hope you have enjoyed this session as much as we have. We look forward to your participation. Thank you.